Welcome back to Chow Time Pods. Your host, Red.
Am I crazy, or does this guy look a lot like Orion Taraban?
Like a chubbier version of him, yeah.
Dan Jones is an honest and hard-working bloke, the product of an equally decent family. 8 years ago, he met the woman he thought he'd spend the rest of his life with. Her name is Sarah Jane Parkinson. Together, she and Dan planned their wedding and started building a house. But just as life was looking so good, Parkinson started making up vile stories about her fiancé. She went to police, accusing Dan of despicable domestic violence and rape. He strenuously denied the allegations, but to no avail. It would take 6 long years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars before the truth was finally revealed, that the woman Dan thought loved him wasn't a victim, but a pathological liar.
I'm getting goosebumps, like listening to like what she just said right now. You know, as a kid growing up, I thought a lot of women were victims. I really did. I thought a lot of women out there were getting mistreated and all this, and I felt so bad. Now that I'm this age, I look at shit like this and I'm just like, like how much I've learned, how much the world has taught me, how much women have taught me about themselves has really, again, I can't even think the way I used to think that, oh my God, I feel so bad for these women. No, the first thing I think of, is this real? You know, that is literally the first thing I think of nowadays. And why is it this way? Women did this, right? They cried wolf too many damn times. Me too damn much. Flew too damn close to the damn sun. Now they're just damned.
Absolute nightmare fuel for any man. But if you're scared of false accusations, you're going to want to watch this video, because you probably don't realize that a lot of people don't actually believe women when they make accusations against men, specifically because she's a woman.
Again, when I was younger, that was not the case. I thought, damn, women are victims left and right. Now I'm like, did they deserve it? I'm just kidding.
The ability of the accuser splits along gender lines. 81.6% of respondents believed false reports for males to be less than 10%, but only 56.9% of respondents believed this to be the case for females. In layman's terms, if a man makes an accusation towards a woman, most people believe him, but when a woman makes an accusation towards a man, it's 50%. A lot more mixed. People just in general find men to be more credible, I guess, on this stuff. And this really pisses off feminists.
Which makes sense, because men don't usually cry wolf about these things, because we usually can't cry about these things.
This is why they have to keep chanting, believe women, because people kind of don't. The thing is that to force yourself on a woman is just such a horrific act that people have a difficult time believing it. They can't imagine it happening. They don't want to believe it. But a woman lying, that's easy to believe. People lie all the time. Lying is a universal, low-stakes behavior that we're all personally familiar with. So
True.
Believing that somebody lied doesn't really require much imagination or a leap of faith. And as much as feminism tries to promote solidarity with the sisterhood, it doesn't really work, because women are familiar with other women. They know how they operate. They know what women can be like.
I had a homegirl, right? She had an encounter with a guy. She was on him. She hella liked him, whatever. She called me the next day. She was like, yeah, we did woo woo. And I was like, right? A year or so passes. She meets a guy that she's really serious with. And then she's like, so I was thinking about that one guy I was with and thinking. And I was like, you totally wanted him. You totally called me. You totally told me all the details. Like, what do you mean right now? But I think it was like the shame that I think she felt that she allowed herself to go there. And then when she met a serious guy, I think to herself, she was trying to make it seem like he overstepped or whatever. I think
This is the problem with nowadays with women. They have no shame, but when they do feel shame, somehow it's men's fault.
Like that. And I'm like, God forbid my son were to have an encounter with a girl. She fully is, fine with things.
Mm-hmm.
And then months later, is like, the shame that I feel is uncomfortable. So I'm just going to say that you took advantage of me.
Here's the thing, right? Real assaults
Crazy.
do happen. False accusations
Of course.
also happen. They both occur. That much is obvious. The question is, what percentage of accusations are false? That's what I'm going to answer in this video, because with so many people skeptical of women, we need to find out whether or not this skepticism is justified. But it's a hard question to answer, because what do you mean by accusation? Are you talking about criminal reports, or are you talking about just...
We already know the criminal reports. We watch a lot of Dan, and Dan covers this a lot. They always go, it's the 2% false accusation. And even when people are found to be false accusing, they don't get booked for false accusing. They get booked for other things, so it doesn't even get registered as false accusation.
stuff spreading through a friend group or on social media. It's an accusation, but the law's not involved. Why wouldn't a woman report the crime? Well, if you ask the cynic, they might say that she knows that her story is not going to stand up to scrutiny when she brings it to law enforcement. If you ask the feminist, she'll say that she didn't come forward with the story to the police because she's scared that she won't be believed. But leaving aside the large number of men who are publicly accused of something, but it never goes to the police, when we're just looking at actual reports made to law enforcement, how many of those reports, those accusations, are false? It's tricky to know, and many studies have attempted to answer this question, but as you can see from the results, they vary wildly. One source says only 2% of accusations are false. Another says 90%.
And that's the one that feminists likes to use.
90%. It's such a tricky thing to measure because it's often such a he said, she said crime. Because even if there is physical evidence, how can you prove whether or not she consented in the moment? I'll put a link to the sources down below if you want to go into more depth with your particular country. But you can see here in the UK, they only have a 5% conviction rate. In the United States, it's 6.5%. When a woman makes an accusation to the authorities, more than 6.5% will get arrested, but often the case doesn't go anywhere. Now, that can be for a number of reasons. The woman withdraws her accusation, the police don't believe her, or the investigation just reaches a dead end because there's not enough evidence. And guess what? You can't even take the figures of convictions as absolute proof that the crime took place, because we've all seen the stories of innocent men who go to prison and then years later the woman recants. Whoops, sorry, I made it.
Diabolical shit, man. Like 10, 20 years after a man's been jailed is when these women finally, tell on themselves, and nothing happens to them. These gentlemen lost 10, 20 years of their lives, and no consequences on these women whatsoever.
It all up. Turns out the guy is completely innocent all along. So how many accusations are false and how many represent a real crime that occurred? The answer is we don't know. Truly, we don't really have any idea. But given the seriousness of the crime and the allegation, I think we can all agree that we need to approach this topic with sensitivity and caution and nuance, right? Everybody would agree to that, even feminists,
Yeah.
right?
Men make more false allegations than women. We know that the majority of the time when a woman says something happened to them, it's true. Men also will say that they've been falsely accused of SA when in reality, they didn't. I see men on this app constantly making false allegations of sexual violence to push a point. And I've never seen a woman do that. When it comes to SA,
What? Oh, I can't even stand this.
men
This is
love to
beyond.
lie and say that they didn't do it and blame the actions solely on the woman, when in reality, you did it, and you are right now making a false accusation against the woman, stating that she falsely accused you. And I'm sorry, but you're going to start needing to provide proof that you were falsely accused.
Women never make stuff up, huh? Well, in my research for this video, I came across a guy who took a very unique approach to trying to find out what is the true number of false allegations. He did this by cross-referencing some different data sets in a really interesting way. What he did is he took self-reported survey data and then used that to predict how many reports police should be receiving, given the accepted frequency with which women will make reports. Then he compared that prediction with the number of actual crimes that police reported, which gave him the conclusion that if there is any excess in the data over what should be predicted, then that would likely indicate a false accusation. I'll put a link down below if you want to go into more depth on this, because the figures are absolutely astonishing. And to be clear, this is not proof of anything. This hasn't been confirmed, but as you can see, the prediction using this method in 2019
It went up to 80%.
false accusations would have reached a rate of 80%. But again, to be clear, the researcher who did these calculations has just come to these figures using extrapolation. I want to reiterate that when it comes to trying to figure out what percentage,
I can see the 60% thing though. 60% seems like a pretty solid number that most accusations are false accusations at 60% level. I just don't see it any lower than that.
of accusations are false, we really don't know. And that's why, given that it's such a sensitive topic, it would be irresponsible to just be throwing figures and statistics around, right?
No, I think an over 50% of all accusations of it being false can be pretty accurate in my opinion, just through my own anecdotal like evidence in my own head. But
I fully believe that 95% of all men in the United States would have taken a plane ride to Epstein Island.
Let's get controversial. I truly do not think that these women actually care about female victims of sexual assault. I don't think they give a shit. I don't think that they're scared of an increase in the number of men who are committing these crimes. I think that they're hoping for it. I really do. I think what they're actually scared of is losing control of the narrative that all women are trustworthy, innocent victims and all men are rapists.
Yes, all men at some point are rapists. Coercion is rape.
See, that's interesting because I don't think that feminists actually realize how much that definition undermines their own case. Here's something you'll never hear feminists talk about or see reported in the mainstream media. In 2011, the CDC reported results from the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, one of the most comprehensive surveys of sexual victimization conducted in the United States to date. The survey found that men and women had a similar prevalence of non-consensual sex in the previous 12 months, 1.270 million women and 1.267 million men. This remarkable finding challenges stereotypical assumptions about the gender of victims of sexual violence. However, unintentionally, the CDC's publication and the media coverage that followed instead highlighted female sexual victimization, reinforcing public perceptions that sexual victimization is primarily a women's issue. If you want to read more, I'll put a link to this publication down below. But what you need to understand is that the moment that you start including statistics on coercion, on men being made to penetrate, suddenly there's gender equality. Now that's interesting. We have a species-wide problem here where people everywhere are using control and intimidation and fear to try and coerce other people into sexual acts. That's not good. We should all come together and try and stop this, right? Well, we could, but feminists don't want to hear the real story where men can be victims too. They don't want to hear that men face their own unique gendered difficulties when it comes to being sexually victimized.
you know how many times I've been groped? More times than I can count.
That men have a lot of difficulty recognizing when they've been sexually assaulted. That it's hard as a man to overcome the shame and the stigma and actually go and report the crime. That it's very difficult for men to believe that anyone's going to take them seriously. And they certainly don't want to hear the real story about the fact that women make false accusations for revenge, for leverage, for a method to distance themselves from their own shame. And I'll take it one step further, because I'm not convinced that feminists even want the story about how to protect genuine female victims. Because the moment that somebody says something that's common sense, like don't walk the streets alone,
don't dress like a slut at night,
don't drink alcohol to excess, don't go off with a man that you don't know, suddenly the person offering that advice is instantly attacked as though they are the enemy. No, they're not actually interested in protecting women. No, they're just trying to make excuses for men. That's the real reason they're saying that stuff. It's not a good look, right? To be attacking the people who are actually trying to offer practical solutions to minimize this problem. What's going on, feminists? I thought that you cared about protecting women. I don't think that they do. They have reduced genuine victims of sexual assault to political props. What these feminists want more than anything, their absolute top priority is not to protect women.
It's to get as many women to get this done to, so they can report all of this and say, yeah, see, men are evil.
To demonize men.
Not all men, not all men. Yeah, to you. To us, it is all men because it has to be. We have no choice. How are we supposed to know which men are safe? There are enough men that are misogynistic and dangerous for us to have to be cautious with every single one of them. I'm not just talking about the men that essay and even the men who are just a little misogynistic are unsafe to me. If a man perceives women as less than equal in any way, there's a possibility that he will treat me as less than equal. If you want to be a good person, listen, learn, admit your faults, and then grow and change.
If you even look at the language that's used by the media, for example, before a case even begins, before there's any kind of a trial, you'll see the woman described as the victim and the man described as the perpetrator. Or if he's lucky, the alleged perpetrator. If you watch the way the media frames these things, you'll see the true agenda of what's going on here. I talk more about the manipulative use of language to frame this political agenda in part 2 of this video, available on Patreon. But anybody honestly looking at the societal discourse around this topic will see that there is a concerted effort to paint men, all men, with an original sin, a flaw at the very core of our souls, that essentially deep down every single man is a rapist.
You rather cross paths with a man or a bear in the forest?
A bear wouldn't ask me questions like that. And secondly, there's only 3 to 5 bear deaths a year, and there's about like 15,000, I think, from males per year. So if it's a random man, statistically, I'm more likely to get harmed by... You said random man, random bear. Why would I not listen to statistics?
So your answer is bear, though? Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. You've made a criticism of me of generalizing women. You know what I find more egregious than that? If you choose bear over man, you're making a generalization about men. That is misandry. That is man-hating. It's not a stupid question.
Then
it's a temperature check to see if you're a...
I'm not a...
Yes, you are, because you said based off statistics.
Statistically, yes.
Statistically, no, you're wrong, because you haven't factored in that every single day walking down the street, you pass hundreds or even thousands of men. You have...
Dude, if I passed 1,000 bears, I don't think I have a big... I don't think you can pass 10 bears and not die. Just saying.
So many male encounters throughout the year. Any woman who believes that it is more dangerous for her to have an encounter with a man than a bear is a bigoted sexist.
I saw a little article thing that said a man was like getting water or something, and a bear came and swiped his head off. Yeah. And they were like, oh yeah, they don't do anything if you don't harm them or threaten them. You don't think they're animals looking for food? Like, they're hunting, they're predators. Like, what the actual
And she has a heart full of hate. The most generous interpretation that you could make is that she's just not smart enough to understand basic statistics. But for women who think like...
I don't think they're smart enough to understand bigotry and racism and misandry.
Like this, if the two explanations are either that she's hateful and sexist or she's incredibly dumb, neither are good options. But women like this kind of thinking, it comes from the same root cause, which is that women don't know who they are. That's what it all comes back to. They exaggerate and lie because they are insecure in their identity. They don't know what femininity is. I have realized that you cannot understand the modern world without a thorough understanding of the human need for identity. Do you know who you are? Do you belong somewhere? Do you know what your own identity is?
Yeah. Dark Cambodian guy with a wonderful family trying to break into the donut industry. That's who I am.
I didn't, but I do now, and it has changed everything for me. I honestly don't
and does YouTube on the side.
think that there's anything more important. That's why I created my Patreon exclusive series, which details my own journey to discover my own identity, navigating the intellectual and emotional difficulties, the controversies that come with finding out who you are when you're a white man in the West. If you'd like to see episode 1, just sign up to my Patreon or to YouTube memberships. But bringing this back to women, it's important to remember that this generation of modern women have been subject to some pretty relentless propaganda. How many years did that 1 in 3 men would rape if given the chance figure get spread around as though it is a fact? Even when specific figures get debunked, the damage is often already done. I spend some time in part 2 of this video talking about base rate neglect, explaining the cognitive mechanism of why headlines get remembered and statistics don't. But since so many women think that all men...
I mean, I'm guilty of that. Like, you gotta have to make the headlines a little salacious for people to want to click and read, you know? I'm guilty of it. I know I do it, but you guys clicked, didn't you?
And are rapists. Let's actually look at the data. Let's look at the real statistics on this. If you take what has been actually proven, like in the United States, 8,000 convictions for rape every year. So assuming that there are no false convictions, that would be 0.006% of men. But of course, we can assume that the number will be higher than that because not every incident is going to lead to a conviction. So to get a more accurate number, we can extrapolate. In the annual reports from the NCVS, roughly 280,000 women say that they were raped or sexually assaulted. Once you factor in the accepted statistical likelihood that some of these incidents were done by repeat offenders, you know, the crime was committed by the same man multiple times, then you get to a figure of 0.037% to 0.112% of men. That's a range of about 1 in 900 to 1 in 2,700. And again, this is the absolute maximum estimate, because this is assuming that all the self-reported surveys were being truthful and honest. But this is the absolute upper limit. And given that 3% of the population are psychopaths who don't feel empathy, then these figures are not actually that high.
Yeah. I was like, damn, 0.1% and 3% are psychopaths? Okay.
Obviously, we wish that the figure was 0%, but this is hardly an epidemic, and it certainly does not indicate that this is a trait that belongs to all men.
Stop asking why women hate men and start asking why men hate women. The gender-based violence statistics are nowhere near close to symmetrical. Women have been getting harassed, oppressed, and mistreated by men. And in response to this social phenomenon, women, out of righteous anger, pain, and frustration, started saying, I hate men. But what is a result of that anger? Women didn't translate their anger into men. We translated it into fighting for social justice, equal rights, and restoration of human dignity for all human beings. But a lot of men, on the other hand, refuse to confront the problem by injecting distractions, by first making it about them. Oh, you're in pain? Okay, but let's talk about me. Let's talk about how I'm not one of those guys. And then asking women not to be so angry at a social phenomenon of violence. But if you're so unwilling to acknowledge the problematic behaviors of the men who you don't even know, imagine how hard you must have fought to deny the abuses of men in your life who you know.
There is so much wrong
crazy
with...
What do I say? Asian women are cool.
That. First of all, you did not translate this into a fight for justice for all human beings. Feminism does not care about male victims. Second, it is not a social phenomenon. Pretending like this is some kind of widespread epidemic of attacks from men is sexist and bigoted. Third, gender-based violence statistics absolutely are close to symmetrical. Yes, in those rare cases at the far end of the spectrum where very severe damage is done, women are more likely to be the victims because men are stronger. But if you look at the number of perpetrators who are violent inside their relationships in a non-reciprocal domestic violence situation, women are actually twice as likely to be the aggressor. Fourth, the reason why men are saying I'm not one of those guys isn't because he wants to create a distraction. He's responding to something that you brought up. You said all men. Fifth, the reason why men are saying don't get so angry is because the emotions that you're bringing to this situation are out of proportion to the statistics. You're working yourself up into a state. And lastly, stop pushing this idea that men don't speak out against male perpetrators. That is a lie. It actually proves how sexist you are, that you think that there are men out there being like, oh yeah, I support the rapists. I'm on there.
It's just like, we see things going on. It's like, yeah, go guys, keep doing it.
Side, I'm in favor of sexual assault. If men are not as vocal as you are, it's because the issue has already been settled morally and criminally. Nobody is on the side of the rapist. Do you understand that? Nobody. This is settled. It is established. Everybody agrees. We thought that that was obvious. And in case it's not, let me be clear right now. Me, a men's rights activist. If you as a man force yourself on a woman, fuck you. You're a fucking scumbag and I hope you pay for what you did. I have never met a man who thinks it's okay to force themselves on a woman. We, as men, will gladly put ourselves in physical danger to stop an attack like that going on. So to continue this lie that men are out there excusing this kind of behavior is not
fucking bullshit.
Just wrong because you're arguing with ghosts in your head, but it's also unforgivably sexist. Your perception of men is twisted, and it's evidence of your powers of projection, how bigoted your perception is. It is not evidence of any real attitudes coming from men. Okay, let's recap. In this video, I've talked about how frequent false allegations are, the truth behind the feminist narrative that it's all men, and what the feminist true priority is, not protecting female victims, but demonizing men. In part 2, I want to talk about the manipulative way that this is framed using language to make it seem as though the man is always guilty, even before there's been a trial. And I also want to talk about base rate neglect, the psychological mechanism for why it's difficult to actually integrate statistics into our understanding of how frequent something occurs. If you'd like to watch part 2 of this video, or you want to check out my series on identity, you can actually watch them both for free right now by coming over to my Patreon and signing up for a free 7-day trial.
And shout outs to Alex for bringing us great content. This is why we just gotta protect ourselves. It's so hard. Like I always say, I want you guys to have family. I want you guys to have kids. But false accusations out there, you can even do nothing. You can literally just live your life and still get falsely accused of something. That's how crazy the world is nowadays. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I really appreciate that. And catch you guys next time. Ciao.